The first team in Labrynth To Lord Stanley got eliminated after number 8. Will any teams get eliminated tonight? Let's find out. Boston Bruins versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. Both of these teams are defensive-oriented teams with excellent depth at defense. That's why I anticipated a low-scoring defensive contest. Turns out that was the exact opposite of what we got in tonight's game. The Toronto Maple Leafs struck first with the Joffrey Lupul goal. Then Cody Franzen scored, giving Toronto a 2-0 lead over the Boston Bruins after one period. Then Patrice Bergeron scored on a power play goal. Then David Krejci scored 2 goals, giving Boston a 3-2 lead, followed by MacArthur scoring. And then Krejci scored in overtime. But the Patrice Bergeron power play goal really set the tempo. Then Krejci scored those goals, giving Boston some critical opportunities. Boston had 44 shots on goal to Toronto's 41. Tuukka Rask deserves a lot of credit because he made some critical saves in critical situations, and those saves allowed Rask to carry the Bruins to a critical Game 4 win that puts them up 3-1. They go back to the TD Garden in Boston with an opportunity to close out that series, and I expect them to close out that series because that's a home game. That's a winnable game for the Boston Bruins. And if they don't win Game 5, I think they can still take it in 6. I predicted that the Boston Bruins would win this series in 6 games. I'm saying that it's either going to end in Game 5 and Game 6. So even if Toronto wins Game 5 in Boston, I still think this series is going to end in 6 games. And if Toronto pushes it to a Game 7, the Maple Leafs deserve to win this series if they push it to 7 games. Because we're all going to say, oh, the Boston Bruins are about to choke. They were up 3-1, now it's 3-3, and here we are, Game 7 in Boston. Anything can happen, and then the Boston Bruins barely squeak by. And it's just ironic how in sports you always have these tug-of-war-like events. 1 minute it's this way, 1 minute it's the next way. It's always like this. And then the second game featured the Washington Capitals and the New York Rangers. Brad Richards scores off a wrist shot to make it 1-0. Rangers lead by 1 heading into the second. Cody Hagelin scores on a slap shot, giving the Rangers a 2-0 lead. Hagelin finished the game with 1 goal and 2 assists. 2-1 Rangers. Troy Brouwer ties the game at 2 off a backhanded goal. Third period, Rangers power play. Dan Girardi. Girardi scores, breaking the 2-2 tie. Then Derek Stepan scored the game-winning goal for the Rangers, which put them up 4-2. Rangers would go on to win 4-3. New York wins 2 critical games, and like the New York Islanders, the underdog in New York is really generating a lot of hype right now. I expected the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Washington Capitals to both sweep their opponents out of the NHL playoffs. The Islanders and the Rangers are stepping up. They're delivering. They're making both of these series exciting. And tomorrow night we see the Islanders face the Penguins with Thomas Vokunin at goaltender. And Marc-Andre Fleury's looked sluggish in the NHL playoffs, so the Penguins are switching things up. They're going with Thomas Vokunin, and we'll see how Vokunin does, because this is a move that could make or break the series, because if Vokunin does poorly, the Islanders win Game 5, they go back home to the New York for Game 6, and the Islanders have a chance to knock the Penguins out of the playoffs, so that'll be fun. You look at how that series could go, the Islanders could pull the upset, and it'll be interesting to see how that occurs. It won't be fun for Penguins fans, but you get the point. The Los Angeles Kings face the St. Louis Blues. Second period, Jeff Carter scores the first goal before Alexander Steen ties the game at 1. Then Jeff Carter scored on the power play. And so much for the St. Louis Blues penalty killing. I've talked so much about how penalty killing is important, and these teams are capitalizing on the power play, making my argument seem counterintuitive, and making a case for why the power play is even more important. In less than a minute left in the game, it looks like the Kings are going to go up 3-2 in the series, maybe 3-1 in this game. Blues pull their goalie. Brian Elliott makes a save before the Blues get a shot towards Quicksway, which results in a face-off. Alexander Pietrangelo scored for the Blues. That sent this game into overtime. Jonathan Quick keeps the Kings in this game. Anze Kopitar to Slava Voinov with the goal. Voinov scores. Kings win. They take a 3-2 lead in this series. And like I said before, Jonathan Quick helped the Kings win this game because St. Louis Blues had 37 shots on goal, the Kings 12 at one point in this game. And Jonathan Quick's ability to make saves at goaltender gives the Kings this win, because the Kings were lucky to get those 2 goals from Jeff Carter in regulation. And when they go into overtime, they get the momentum. Slava Voinov steps up, he capitalizes, and the Kings win this game. I know some Blues fans are being subjective, saying there's no excuse. This team's up 2-0. You're about to knock off the Kings, and you've lost 2 in a row, now 3 in a row, and that the Blues won games by 1 goal. Their games were by pure luck, sheer luck, pure luck, whatever you want to call it. The Kings delivered, though. The Kings delivered in games 3 and 4. You have to look at it from an objective standpoint if you're a Kings fan. But tonight, I think you could say, you know, the Blues, you have to be subjective towards the Blues rather than be objective towards the Kings, because the Blues outshot the Kings. They got back into this game. They had a chance to win it in overtime, and they didn't. This was a winnable game at home in Game 5, and the St. Louis Blues did not deliver. And you hear all these people tweeting about how the St. Louis Blues, they should have won Game 3 and 4 instead of crediting the Kings for those wins. And the Kings deserve to be credited for those wins in Games 3 and 4 because they won those games at home, they took care of business, and then they sent this series to St. Louis for Game 5. Then they win in overtime, even though the Blues outshot the Kings, and Quick made the saves, and they had to rely on Jeff Carter to score goals in regulation. So the Kings go up 3-2, and they have a chance to close out the series at the Staples Center in Game 6. I picked the Blues in 6 games originally, but the Kings have a chance to reverse my prediction in this series in 6 games. We'll see what the Kings do. And maybe the Kings will keep their Stanley Cup championship intact for one more round. Final game featured the Detroit Red Wings and the Anaheim Ducks. The game was tied 2-2 after 3 periods. Bobino scores. The Ducks win this game. They go 3-2 in the series. Mike Babcock's got to organize a game plan, get the Red Wings to win these final 2 games, or Detroit's going home. I'll tell you what, I didn't expect this series to last this long, go 6 games. And even if Detroit goes home, they have to be proud of how they've played this postseason, because I expected the Red Wings to suck because Nicholas Lidstrom was gone. I didn't think they were going to make the playoffs. Detroit makes the playoffs, they get in, and they're hanging around with Anaheim. They're making these games 1-score games. You know, the Ducks are supposed to win this series because they're the higher seed. They've got the better penalty killing unit. But Bruce Boudreau, maybe he's not all that at head coach. Maybe Mike Babcock is just that good of a head coach that he's able to rally the Red Wings, keep them in, keep this team resilient, even though experts say they're going to lose. Detroit's hanging in there, and they're only losing games by 1 goal or 2 goals. So Game 1, they lost by 1 goal in Anaheim. Game 5, they lose by 1 goal in overtime. So the Red Wings, they're playing a lot better than the pundits predicted. Still, they didn't come through with the win. The Ducks came through with the win, and Anaheim up 3-2 in the series, with the series going back to Detroit for Game 6. Tomorrow night, you got the Ottawa Senators. They have a chance to knock off the Montreal Canadiens. The Chicago Blackhawks have a chance to knock off the Minnesota Wild, plus Game 5 of the Islanders versus Penguins. I think those games, in general, are far more exciting than the games we're getting for tonight. But that's just me. And, you know, these games were exciting tonight because you had 3 of them end in overtime. And there's nothing better than playoff hockey that goes into overtime where you get to see a winner. For more NHL playoff information, check out draftutopia.com. This is Chris Ransom of Draft Utopia signing off.